Welcome back to our channel, soap fans. Today is a beautiful, thrilling day for some explosive daytime drama. And we have a monumental, jaw-dropping scoop that will shake the Forrester empire to its absolute core. The amber pill bottle rolled across the polished mahogany floor, stopping dead at Steffy Forrester's designer heels. In one shattering, cinematic heartbeat, the powerful CEO realized the monster wasn't hiding in the shadows of Los Angeles. He was sitting in the executive chair. Steffy Forrester Finnegan is drowning. The walls of Forrester Creations are closing in on her, shrinking the air in the room to a toxic, suffocating vacuum. Her body is betraying her. The relentless, violent waves of nausea are no longer something she can brush off as stress or exhaustion. It is the undeniable, terrifying physical manifestation of a pregnancy. She is carrying a devastating secret, a ticking biological time bomb that threatens to obliterate her marriage to Finn, her family, and her entire corporate empire. The guilt has been eating her alive, chewing at her sanity every single time Finn looks at her with his trusting, devoted eyes. She needed to see Carter Walton. She needed to coordinate their lies. Ridge Forrester is already circling them like a hawk, his sharp instincts picking up on the toxic, lethal vibe radiating between his daughter and his COO. Ridge caught them arguing in a hidden corner of the building, and while they managed to spin a rapid, bogus explanation to throw him off the scent, Steffy knows her father is not a fool. The pressure is mounting. The cover-up is unraveling. She marched down the executive hallway, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, desperate to formulate a foolproof strategy with the man she believed was her partner in this drunken, catastrophic mistake. Steffy pushed open the heavy oak door to the CEO office. The room was empty. Carter was nowhere to be found. The silence in the expansive suite was deafening, amplified by the heavy, suffocating memories clinging to the furniture. Her eyes immediately darted to the leather couch, the exact spot where her life imploded. The visual trigger sent a fresh, violent wave of bile rising in her throat. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to block out the fragmented, blurry flashes of that night. The grief over Monaco, the anger at Finn, the burning alcohol, the blackout. Pacing the length of the office, Steffy tried to steady her erratic breathing. She needed to pull herself together before Carter returned. She needed to be the ruthless, in-control Forrester CEO, not a terrified, pregnant woman on the verge of a breakdown. She swung around sharply, her mind racing with a million catastrophic scenarios. In her frantic, dizzying pivot, the strap of her heavy designer handbag caught the edge of Carter's massive desk. The bag swung violently, slamming into the side of the wooden structure. The impact jarred a partially closed, concealed drawer on the side of the desk. The metallic lock mechanism, perhaps faulty or hastily shut by a distracted Carter, gave way with a sharp click. The drawer slid open, and the contents spilled outward. A cascade of loose files, expensive pens, and a single small object tumbled onto the expensive rug. It was a small, unmarked amber pill bottle. Steffy froze. The plastic cylinder rattled against the floorboards before coming to a complete stop right at the tip of her stiletto. She stared at it, a strange, creeping sense of unease washing over her. Carter was a fitness fanatic, a picture of perfect health. He never mentioned taking medication, and this bottle looked entirely out of place. There was no standard pharmacy label, no brightly colored warning stickers, just a stark, clinical white label printed with a complex, unpronounceable chemical name. Driven by a sudden, inexplicable surge of paranoia, Steffy slowly lowered herself to the floor. Her trembling fingers reached out, brushing against the cold plastic. She picked up the bottle, bringing it closer to the light filtering through the massive office windows. The chemical name meant absolutely nothing to her, but the secrecy of the locked drawer and the stark, clinical packaging sent a massive red flag soaring into the air. With her heart hammering wildly against her chest, Steffy pulled her smartphone from her pocket. Her thumbs shook violently as she typed the complex chemical sequence into the search engine. The loading bar crawled across the top of her screen. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. The agonizing wait felt like an eternity, stretching the tension in the room to a breaking point. The search results populated the screen. Steffi's breath hitched in her throat. The bolded, clinical text stared back at her, burning itself into her retinas. Potent central nervous system depressant.
Rapid onset anesthesia.
Severe anterograde amnesia. Incapacitation. Steffi's blood ran ice-cold. The glowing screen detailed the horrific reality of the drug. It was a heavy, dangerous sedative. A chemical weapon designed to completely paralyze the victim's motor functions and wipe their short-term memory clean. It was a highly restricted substance, entirely illegal to possess without a specialized medical license. It was, in the most brutal and clinical terms, a sophisticated date rape drug. The smartphone slipped from her trembling fingers, hitting the floor with a dull thud. The nausea that had been plaguing her all morning violently shifted. It was no longer the morning sickness of a pregnancy. It was the pure, visceral, earth-shattering disgust of a horrifying realization. The room began to spin, the walls warping and bending as the tectonic plates of her reality violently shifted beneath her feet. The fragmented, blurry memories of that catastrophic night suddenly snapped into razor-sharp, terrifying focus. She remembered fleeing Monaco in a feral rage, hurling her wedding ring at Finn's chest. She remembered stumbling into this very office, blinded by grief and exhaustion. She remembered Carter standing by the bar. She remembered the wine. The cinematic reconstruction of the night played out in her mind with horrific clarity. Carter hadn't handed her a bottle to pour herself. He had poured the glass with his back turned to her. He had walked over, his eyes locked onto hers, and handed her the deep red liquid. She remembered the slightly bitter aftertaste, which she had foolishly blamed on the cheap vintage. She remembered the rapid, unnatural heaviness that invaded her limbs just minutes later. She had blamed it on the altitude, the jet lag, the emotional exhaustion. She remembered the room spinning, her vision blurring, and the sudden, terrifying inability to lift her arms. And then absolute darkness, the crushing, suffocating guilt that had been destroying her soul for weeks instantly evaporated. It was violently replaced by a blinding, white-hot terror. She didn't have a drunken lapse in judgment. She didn't willingly betray her devoted husband. She didn't throw her marriage away in a moment of weakness. She was hunted. She was targeted. She was drugged. Carter Walton didn't just comfort a grieving, intoxicated friend. He actively, meticulously orchestrated the entire horrific encounter. He spiked her drink. He watched her lose consciousness. He stripped away her agency, her memory, and her physical control. He engineered a vile, predatory assault and seamlessly framed it as a mutual drunken mistake. The paradigm shift was absolute and terrifying. Steffi clutched her stomach, a guttural, choked sob escaping her lips. The terrifying pregnancy was no longer the result of a foolish mistake. It was the biological evidence of a violent, calculated crime. She was carrying the child of her attacker. The sheer horror of the violation ripped through her nervous system, leaving her paralyzed on the floor of the executive suite. The monster was hiding in plain sight. Carter Walton, the trusted Forrester COO, the brilliant legal mind, the loyal family friend, the devoted husband to Daphne Rose. It was all a meticulously crafted, sociopathic mask. He had stood right next to her, looking ridge dead in the eye, spinning brilliant, flawless lies to protect their secret. He was playing the role of the panicked, guilty lover to absolute perfection, all while knowing he was the architect of her destruction. And Daphne, the realization hit Steffi like a freight train. Daphne had returned from Paris, desperate to repair her marriage, completely oblivious to the fact that she was sleeping next to a predator. Carter was manipulating his wife, playing the devoted, heartbroken husband, while actively covering up a felony assault against her best friend. The sheer magnitude of Carter's deception was staggering, a sociopathic masterpiece of manipulation and control. Steffy's mind raced with the terrifying legal and corporate implications. Carter was the top legal mind in the company. He knew every loophole, every security camera blind spot, every legal maneuver to protect himself. If she came forward, it would be her blurred, drug-induced memory against his flawless, legally bulletproof narrative. He would paint her as a hysterical, regretful woman trying to cover up a consensual affair to save her marriage to Finn. He had the power, the reputation, and the legal expertise to destroy her all over again. Suddenly, the heavy, rhythmic sound of footsteps echoed in the marble hallway outside. Steffy's heart stopped. The footsteps were approaching the CEO office. It was the confident, measured stride of Carter Walton. Pure, primal survival instinct hijacked Steffy's paralyzed body. The blinding terror morphed into a desperate, adrenaline-fueled frenzy. She snatched the amber pill bottle off the rug, her hands shaking so violently she nearly dropped it again. She lunged toward the desk, shoving the bottle back into the concealed drawer. She slammed the wooden panel shut, praying the broken lock would hold just long enough to avoid suspicion. She scrambled on her hands and knees, grabbing her fallen smartphone and stuffing it into her blazer pocket. She grabbed her designer bag, hauling herself up from the floor just as the brass doorknob began to slowly turn. She desperately smoothed down her skirt, wiping the cold, terrified sweat from her forehead. She forced her trembling legs to lock into place, taking a deep, shuddering breath to steady her wildly erratic pulse. The heavy oak door swung open. Carter Walton stepped into the office. He looked impeccable, his tailored suit perfectly pressed, his handsome face arranged into that familiar, trustworthy expression. He closed the door behind him, the heavy click of the latch echoing like a gunshot in the silent room. His eyes locked onto Steffy, a smooth, calculated smile playing on his lips. "Steffy," Carter said, his deep voice dripping with that fake, manufactured concern. "I didn't expect you in here. Is everything all right? You look a little pale." Steffy stared at the man standing across the room. The man she now knew was a vile, calculating predator. She was locked in a soundproof office with her attacker, carrying the physical evidence of his crime. And he had absolutely no idea that she had just uncovered his horrific, sociopathic masterpiece. Will Steffy expose Carter's vile crime, or is she trapped with a lethal predator? Drop your theories below and subscribe for the explosive fallout.